It was a coven. They were around talking about QAnon conspiracies and all these lies and magical thinking of ways to kill their opponents.
Welcome to this week's Wacky Moments of Leftist Extremism. The crazy train was in full operation in the leftist media this week. The first stop was the CPAC conference over the weekend. Now, the leftist media can't comprehend why people would gather together and discuss things like the Constitution and gun rights and limited government. And then Donald Trump spoke there. So they're just really, really hurting inside at MSNBC.
That's true. But at the same time, it's hard to miss the fact that Trumpism has won. And, you know, it's amazing as a woman watching that footage because it really is just like a festival of toxic masculinity.
As compared to the festival of toxic arrogance that's called the MSNBC lineup. Remember?
He could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think. And that is our job.
This week, CNN's Fredo is convinced that CPAC is a coven where people come up with magical homicide. No, I'm serious.
You called it a coven. That's what it reminded me of that, but go on. Sorry.
It was a coven. They were around talking about QAnon conspiracies and all these lies and magical thinking of ways to kill their opponents.
Yeah, that sounds like journalism, doesn't it? Meanwhile, the leftist code of silence on Governor Cuomo's sexual harassment allegations was slowly breaking. But when the network news operations were forced to talk about Fredo's brother, well, ABC's news operation, The View, blames Republicans for Cuomo's problems.
It seems to me when it comes to Governor Cuomo, politics are certainly taking a bit of a part in it, notwithstanding the nursing home scandal, because I do think that is something that he needs to explain, and we need to certainly investigate that. But when it comes to these claims about sexual harassment, I mean, you now have a lot of Republican congresspeople coming forward and saying, I am going to challenge the governor in 2022. And let's remember that the former president is certainly looking at several investigations, as are his children, into their untoward behavior. And the governors of most U.S. states have the power to grant pardons or reprieves for offenses under state criminal law. So I'm sure that Republicans would love to have a Republican governor here in New York so that he won't be held accountable, or his children, for all of their behavior. So we need to also think about what kind of political play is going on here.
Right. See, it is Trump's fault. Why would you hold Cuomo responsible? I mean, you could end up with a Republican governor if you do that. Call L'Oreal, tell them to stop advertising on cover-ups for Democrats. Now, Cuomo accusations in CPAC aren't the only things that upset the leftist media this week. Mass mandates were dropped in Texas and Mississippi, and could it have been for business or personal freedom? Well, not on MSNBC.
Jason, there is a term called necropolitics, which is essentially the politics of who gets to live and who gets to die. And these states, what they have in common is that they have structures which say that black and brown lives matter less. And so all that matters is that the black and brown people get their behinds into the factory and make me my steaks, make me my stuff, get there and do my nails, work, get back to work now and do the things that I, the comfortable, affluent person, need. Isn't that what we're seeing? I mean, that's what it feels like to me. Necropolitics in states like Texas.
Oh, yeah. The Hunger Games would be more humane, right? If they made people line up and fight for vaccines, at least then you have a fighting chance. No, they're just going to starve people. And it's always seemed ironic to me that the party of supposedly family values is basically saying, you kids starve, auntie starves, uncle starves, and my wife and my smart son get to eat and get to live and get the vaccine. That is essentially what's happening here.
Is it really?
Yeah. The Hunger Games would be more humane, right?
Dropping mass mandates for everyone is racist, and it makes things like the Hunger Games. I mean, that's a thought that's about as insane as claiming that using police to stop an increase in crime causes violence. But yeah, they said that this week too.
Is more policing the answer? Because the downside to more policing means that police can then maybe target the same communities, because a lot of Asian American communities are struggling communities. Because more policing probably means more violence.
You would think that I'm just done with Joy Reid at this point, but I'm not. Here's another pants-crappingly insane show topic that you'll only catch on MSNBC. All Republicans are violent, but Antifa's burning, looting, and violence, that is completely noble.
There is no equivalency by any measure between Antifa or any political left terrorism right now and what's going on the political right. And I always like to remind people when they hear Antifa, that means anti-fascist, which is in response to another. So if you have Antifa, then you have FA, or as in fascist, which comes down to white supremacy. It's the #1 issue in the country.
Yes, it all boils down to racism, of course. That's essentially the word association game. That is what all Joy shows end up being. Yogurt, racism. Birds, racism. Now, it may seem like everything this week just showcased how unhappy, angry, and barely wound up the left generally is, but they did have some fleeting moments that got them happy and excited. On CBS, it was the thought of high taxes and government handouts.
I'm very excited to talk about what would happen if you gave people $500 a month with no strings attached. It's an idea known as the guaranteed basic income. And you might assume, hey, that's free money. People are going to waste it. They're going to work less. They're going to be lazy.
No, I actually just see that as wealth redistribution. You?
And you may not be surprised to learn people were less anxious, less depressed, and less fatigued overall. This has the potential to radically change the way we think of social assistance.
I'm a little surprised.
Yeah, I think it's really amazing.
Just amazing, that socialism. You don't even want to question it, huh? One other item this week that the left doesn't really want to question is the Biden administration. No solo press conferences from Biden himself, but this past weekend, MSNBC had the opportunity to ask VP Kamala Harris all the tough, burning questions that they had inside.
Let me ask you, what does Black History Month mean to you?
It means everything to me.
Wonderful. The questions actually do get tougher as the interview goes on, though.
As the Vice President of the United States, this is your first interview in that ceremonial office. Last night you had members of the Congressional Black Caucus. A sister with the A, not the ER, from Howard sitting there. How much of that, Howard and the AK, how much of that helped make you and who you are and where you are and how you sit there now?
There are two things that I attribute to who I am. One is the family in which I was raised, and the other is Howard University.
Unemployment levels, high gas prices, the economy in general. You don't want to ask about those things, but Harris wasn't the best guest to even grace the MSNBC studios this week.
Michael, it seems ridiculous for me to be sitting right here on a primetime television news show with a Mrs. Potato Head next to me.
Actually, that was perhaps the most intellectual guest they had on all week at MSNBC. I'm Eric Shiner for MRC-TV, telling you to take a break, do some online shopping at MRC-Store.com. Check out MRCTV.org for more great videos and stories. Like and subscribe to us on Rumble, Parler, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and all the other various social media platforms that are out there. And we'll be back with some more leftist lunacy next week.